Hello there, welcome to this very quick video where I'll just talk a little bit about what Unit 4 entails and then also Lessons 1 and 2. Now, Unit 4, like it says here, deals with variables, conditionals, and functions. So it describes each of those sort of in 4 lesson sets, and so they sort of run through an explore, investigate, practice, and make. So that's basically how it works for those three sections. All right, so we're going to look at variables to start with, and we kind of talked a little bit about them in class, but this will get you into a bit more depth there. So there's basically, exploring here, so you're figuring out how they kind of work, looking at some apps that do it, use variables, and basically every single program will use a variable. In here, I've just sort of gone through with a little bit of vocabulary, so just a few little questions to help you. There are some steps here, so you should watch this video, and it explains how variables work. This is very important if you've never used variables before, or for those of you that have, it might be a good review there. So I just sort of go through a bunch of slides, how it would sort of work out there. So I'd recommend watching that video, and then making sure that you understand these words, expression, variable, what the assignment operator is, what arithmetic operators are, and what strings are. So some of those may be familiar, some of those a little bit different. Okay, one thing to keep in mind is that because the AP Computer Science Principles does not use a programming language, a specific programming language, they have sort of a pseudocode, and they use the kind of arrow pointing to the left as the assignment operator. So just keep that in mind, that when we're writing the equal sign, you will see in AP exam questions and AP material that this arrow pointing here is the same as the assignment operator, right? So it just says this is written as this in JavaScript and in most other programming languages. All right, so then it just goes into a little bit of vocabulary at the end. 4.2, right? Same idea, but now you're going to be sort of using the apps and thinking about how it works, what are the variables, what's being stored, what's being changed, and that's using variables there, right? There's a little bit of maybe some new functions here to look at. The math.round, so it's from the math sort of component and using the round function and seeing what happens. And this idea of investigating code by messing around with it is really important in understanding coding, okay? So what it says here, how do you think it works? Put some numbers in, remove it, see what happens. That will let you know and help you understand how it works, okay? And a few more things here, just looking at, what the get text is doing, being able to use the documentation and so on. And then there's two kind of patterns here, programming patterns that are very common to a lot of programs. One is the counter pattern. And so basically we're using a variable as a counter. And so in this case, if you click certain button over and over and over again, it will add 1 to that variable. So you can monitor how many times you've clicked on something or whatever the situation is. It basically is, like it says, a counter. Okay, string concatenation. So that's combining more than one string together with the plus, the operator of plus. So you've got my string plus and plus my other string. So it's combining those two together. Okay, so again, just a familiar programming pattern that often comes up. You might have score, and then you put the score, right? You add the score to it. That would be, that's sort of you have to turn that number to a string, but you get the idea, right? It might be welcome plus Mr. Fleming, right? So you might enter your name in, and then it knows it's Mr. Fleming coming in, so it adds that to personalize it. So very, very common to do string concatenation. So it just talks a little bit about that specific programming pattern. Making sure that you know what can be stored in a variable, pretty well anything, and why is it important to have a variable name. So one thing you'll notice is we're not just calling them A, B, or X or Y. You might sometimes do, like for example, X or Y, if they're X and Y coordinates, it makes sense to call them X and Y. But if it's like the amount of money in your bank account, where your house is located, it doesn't make sense to do that. And just a little bit of vocabulary. Good. So again, it's more in code.org here, where you can work through and solve those little puzzles kind of thing here, right, where you just sort of explore through. I think there's a couple little videos there that you can take a look at. But again, it's just for you to explore and start to understand how those work. the next section, you'll get to using them more, so there'll be sort of problems with it. And then 4 here, the fourth part is making something. So again, it'll be like a little photo liker app, okay? So you can thumbs up kind of thing for it. And that will be a little bit of a something that you'll actually create using your knowledge of variables.